She's back in town, but
I should be here. Do you hear me?
yeah,
There you are.
Okay.
there you are. In Colorado or in Rochester?
I'm in Rochester.
Okay.
Like you have a
Oh,
cold.
Stephanie.
I have a cold and I didn't want to share it.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I always thought you were a sharing person, but I'm glad you
Yeah,
decided
yeah.
not to share that.
We appreciate you a lot. We won't be able to call on you today because the emergency order is over. So
And
you can
just
criticize us later. That's what I've been informed.
yeah, great.
What
The
emer
COVID emergency order. So
You can't
So
vote.
you can't
I
vote.
don't I don't have COVID, but I have a cold.
okay.
Yeah, but no, you can't vote since you're remote.
That's all right.
Yeah.
That's all right.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Heidi. Sure. All right. So we're going to start with public comment. Surprise.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, we have a lovely surprise for you today, and that is all of our participants from the Summer of Discovery project, which is running from today is their first day. Is that right, guys? Okay. And through the 19th of August. We have staff who have been working quite hard to get this set up in partnership with the Girls and Boys Club. Yep. Yep. And the purpose here is to really get some of our younger residents to be involved with county government and learn a lot. They've got a whole week schedule of visiting with various departments and learning about the county. And this project was really a brainchild of Commissioner Wright. So I wonder if he might want to have a few words before the chair might want to recognize some of the kids who may have something to say.
Okay.
Yeah. What I would rather do is I'd rather have the spokesman for the group come up first in public comment.
Okay.
Okay. Would you like to approach? Give us your name and tell us a little bit about who you are and what's going on here.
Hello, my name is B or Briella. I am a member at Boys and Girls Club who was lucky enough to be able to do this program. I'm also the president of our Keystone Leadership volunteer group. And we're just really thankful that you and your staff have allowed us to experience this.
Well, I think it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what are you learning?
Greg said ask the
Put her on
question.
the spot. Come on, Greg.
It's good to be involved with your community because if there are no good options, you should be the good option.
There you
And we have to learn and able to be the good option in the future.
All right. Yeah.
That's-
Thank you.
That's great advice.
Right. So, this project really started with an idea that we know that there are a shortage of workers in the community and that we will have to recruit and retain employees. And one of the best ways to start looking at recruitment is to look at people who are younger, who are starting to look at careers that they might enter and having opportunities in the future. And the county has many of them. So as you're looking at the county and everything that we do, you'll see that with the 1,300 employees that we have, that there are many jobs that are available in very good careers. And maybe one of those might suit you in the future, which of course then, as long as you're still in high school, you can get the background that high school can provide for you and then step into those careers. Some of the careers can be available right after high school, and we do have people that come to us after high school and then continue to work on higher education, post-secondary, and then work their ways into other careers. So thanks for looking at the county. Thanks for looking at not only careers, but taking a very good look at what government does and how government can assist people. So thank you very much. Appreciate that.
It's exciting to have you guys here. All right. So I think we have a volunteer interview today. Alicia Anderson, is she online?
Hi, I am online.
Hi, Alicia, welcome. You're an applicant for the Human Rights Commission. It's a pretty informal process, but can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, and at the end of our meeting, we'll decide, and you'll be notified on going forward.
All right, my name is Alicia Anderson. I'm actually a fairly new resident to Rochester, Minnesota. I moved to Rochester from the Twin Cities in April of this year, and I wanted to get involved in the community, and I thought this was a natural fit for me and my background and um, my interests. I'm currently a senior sourcing consultant at Wells Fargo. I work remotely from my home, so I, I don't get the community interaction that I would like to get. So this was, I thought, was a wonderful opportunity for me.
That's great. You have an impressive resume. Any questions for Alicia?
I did, Sheila Cascaden speaking, one of the commissioners. I did have an opportunity to review your resume. It is very impressive, and our Human Rights Commission, I'm sure, would benefit from your kind of experience. I just have a curiosity question. Since you can live anywhere, why did you choose Rochester for your home and for your remote work? I also want to commend you for coming to town and then within months looking for a way to make a difference in the community. So just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, thank you. I actually moved here because my wife got a job at Mayo, which I think seems to be a common story
Yes, it
that
is.
I hear around
Mhm.
town.
Yeah.
But she works in one of the laboratories at Mayo, and I thought it was a wonderful opportunity to move to a great town that I've heard so much about.
Well, you never know where being a trailing spouse, like I was as well, will lead you. So, welcome to the community, and thank you for your willingness to volunteer for the Human Rights Commission.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for your application, and we will get back to you very soon.
Thank you very much.
Okay, with that, I will call the meeting to order, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, right from the start, we have a public hearing. It's to approve Section 3968 ordinance revisions, drones of the Grand Park rules and regulations. Tom?
Good morning, Commissioners. Tom Canan, Senior Assistant Olmsted County Attorney. We've been at this topic a little while, so I won't go into all the details, but you'll recall earlier this year, the board approved a set of regulations for kind of guide activities at Grand Park. As part of that, we decided, because there's similar language in the county parks rules and regulations about drones, that we would have similar language in there about drones. And not long after the board approved the Grand Park rules and regulations, it was pointed out to us correctly upon additional research that within the last couple of years during the pandemic, the FAA, which has kind of primary authority over drone operations in the United States, had changed some of their rules about overflights over groups of people. And they had previously been much more restrictive about that, and then with the rule change they made about a year and a half ago, allowed it in certain situations. So what you have before you today then is my effort, and I convened a group, just so you're aware. We have a couple of drones that two of the county departments currently use. The Public Works County Surveyor staff, SWCD staff, has a drone that they use for their work. And then the county building operations staff does as well as the sheriff's office has access to those drones from the other departments. And so I have my kind of internal group of county employees that are more experienced in this particular area that I consulted on this. And what you have before you today is the result of the input that I got from the group of employees. And this has been to the Physical Development Committee a couple of times. We've made some tweaks to try to get it into a final form that you see it today. Just to summarize what the new requirements will provide, if you're going to operate a privately owned drone then over Graham Park, there are certain requirements that you have to meet. It's known as Part 107 of the FAA's rules. You have to be in compliance with those rules. For most drone operators, they have to possess what's called a remote pilot certificate, especially if you've got a larger drone. Local governments, my research determined, still have the ability to control takeoffs and landings on property which we own. So we opted to rely on that and basically indicate that takeoffs and landings, which are not part of a drone light show, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a moment, are not permitted. The next thing is the sheriff's office had some, I think, legitimate concerns about security, obviously with drones carrying cameras and the ability potentially in the county sheriff's Homeland Security office being located at Graham Park. We decided to carve out a 500-foot radius around the Homeland Security office where drone operations, if they're occurring in Graham Park, have to occur outside of that 500-foot perimeter. At Commissioner Cascaden's suggestion, I think it was a good one because it's something that wasn't really on my radar, drone light shows appear to be kind of taken off across the country. Fireworks, you're probably aware, have all issues, especially as the drought conditions continue in the western part of the U.S. with creating additional potential for fires and the air pollution that they create. A lot of more interest has occurred in creating these drone light shows. You may have seen them. I've seen them, for example, in the Super Bowl halftime show, the Olympics, I think, opening ceremony, to give you some examples. They're coordinated sets of drones that fly at precise intervals from each other to create a kind of a similar impact that you might see from a fireworks show. So we provided for that they can allow that at Graham Park, but basically there has to be a written agreement in place with the county first, kind of spelling out how and when it's going to occur. They can't occur in places over Graham Park where there are spectators beneath them, and then they're only to be used for the purpose basically of drone light show and not for, let's say, some other type of surveillance at Graham Park. And then lastly, we determined also that the FAA does not have authority generally over indoor drone operations inside buildings. Again, it's another one of those things that I never wasn't even really on my radar, but local governments have control over that. So we simply added some language as well to provide, if there's an interest as part of an event to operate a drone indoors in one of the buildings at Graham Park, you need to get approval from the county building operations staff in advance. So what you need to do today then is open a public hearing, receive public comment from any members of the public who wish to speak to this, and then once you've concluded the public hearing, go ahead and put this to a vote. If it's approved, then it needs to be published once in the county's official newspaper, and it will take effect September 1st. So any questions?
Thanks, Tom.
All right. Any questions?
I wish I would have thought to ask earlier, but why are we focused on Graham Park when we have, Oxbow, Chester, River Park?
I've already told Carlin that we're going to be coming back, assuming you approve this, and we're going to be kind of taking a similar dive into the county parks rules and regs concerning the drone language that's in there. And some parts of this I'm expecting you're going to see in the parks rules and regulations in the future.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, so on that note, I have a question. Why would we want to not allow drones to be flown out of Lake Zembro Park or at Oxbow Park? Why not?
Well, I think there's always a concern when you're overflying groups of people. If the drone comes down.
No, I understand if there's large groups of people, but there are times where Graham Park is not crowded and our parks are not crowded. Why restrict this?
Well, and I think honestly, I haven't had this conversation with Carlin yet. The county parks are less densely populated, if you will, than Graham Park is for a lot of events. And so what works at Graham Park may need to be tweaked to reflect that there are a lot more open spaces at the county parks, and maybe there will be additional areas that drone operations might occur in where they might not be appropriate at Graham Park.
Yeah, I personally have concerns that we're restricting something. I understand restricting it if the county fair is going on or there's a large concert going on and there are hundreds of people on the ground. But if we went out to Graham Park right now, there might be less than a dozen people, and and all those acres, and so there's no real risk. So if somebody wants to fly a drone, that seems like a good spot to fly a drone. So why are we restricting it?
Well, like I said, it's mainly from the potential risk for the public, but it's hard to kind of come up with a one size fits all because the groups that are using Graham Park fluctuate so greatly during the day. It'd be hard to essentially come up with a rule that says, well, you can operate at Graham Park provided you have less than X number of people present.
And nobody's there.
One other thing
I'd
I
like to
wanted
see us try to do that personally.
one other thing I wanted to note, at least we discovered early in the process, and sheriff's here, and I don't know if he wants to comment on that, but it's not really happened, I don't believe, so much in this part of the country, but particularly out in the western U.S., you'll have situations where law enforcement is called to a scene. You've got a fire, let's say, or a large casualty event. You've got law enforcement drones that are operating, attempting to support the people that are on the ground in the event. And then you've got groups of private drones that are circling around the law enforcement drones, really hampering their ability to, frankly, carry out their duty to serve the public. And so, well, that's not necessarily driving what's going on here. There are other concerns beyond just, people on the ground.
I'm on board with legitimate concerns. I just have reservations about this. And I understand that you're working for us, so you're under our direction doing this. So I'm not criticizing you, but I'm wondering, is this an overreach that we're stopping something just because we can stop it? We found a way to stop it, and whether that's legitimate or not. I mean, this is public space. This is a public land. Graham Park's public land. Why are we stopping something that's legal if there's no risk?
Mr. I don't think this was, I think this was staff initiated, but I will tell you, living in the city and near Graham Park, I do get complaints about some of the uses and why people feel it's somewhat intrusive. And I can see where that I've had, and not for Graham Park, but I've had constituent complaints about drones in the downtown area, around apartment buildings, people feeling like they had someone was watching them, and who operates this. And so I think, while I raised the question about all of our parks, I think with Graham Park and so many different kinds of activities, you would want to have some level of management. Now, I don't disagree with you. There are times there's nobody there, but if you don't, I don't know how you would have a rule that said, if, like, I think Mr. Canan was going, if there's fewer than 25 people in the park, you can fly your drone. I think it's hard to have the nuance that you seem to be asking for. On the other hand, they can go across the street over to Soldiers Field Park.
Right, or you can step on our Seneca property and fly that drone off of there too. I don't know, I still have reservations. I'd like to see us sharpen our pencil to see how we could come up with, if we have a major event going on, so if we have a renter of Graham Park, then these drone activities are not allowed. But if Graham Park's essentially not being used, this is a perfect place for somebody to fly their drone without intruding on somebody else. Because what you're talking about, where somebody's flying their drone outside somebody's apartment window, that maybe should be outlawed. But we don't have control over that. That's private property. And
and I guess I would point out too, basically the way the rule was before we changed it was quite restrictive. Honestly, as long as they're in compliance with Part 107, the FAA rules now, and you don't take off or land inside Graham Park, you can take your private drone, if there's not many people at Graham Park, and fly over it given these new rules. So to some extent, I think we've actually addressed your concern.
Right, but we were forced to kind of address that because I think we were restrictive beyond the extent of the law. Because somebody, I can't remember who, somebody emailed me, say, did you know that your law doesn't apply to there's a new federal law, so that's why we looked at it again. But I thought we were erring toward opening it up. And I guess we are opening it up compared to the old law, but the old law was not in compliance with federal law. So I still have my reservations. And then, yeah, you're right. They can step across the tracks in the Seneca Park, take off and land, and we really can't do anything about it. So what did we really accomplish? Maybe we want to look at what happens in airspace when we have events in Graham Park. And,
we're really constrained, other than what I've indicated in here, and the FAA really regulates a lot of the other things that relate to drones. One other thing I wanted to mention, I don't know if you recall, there was an incident, I want to say 8 or 9 years ago, where we had a drone hovering outside the windows of the government center, and I recall that it caused a great deal of kind of consternation and worry by county staff because we didn't know what the intentions of that particular drone operator were. So
I think recently someone flew a drone outside the Rochester Public Schools building, videotaping what was going on inside their admin building. Yeah, there are all kinds of issues where drones are problems. I'm not arguing that. It's just wondering if we're fixing something that's not really broken here. So,
an opinion, Mark.
Yeah.
The drone and the restrictions when there are larger groups, in my mind, that tends to be when people would be looking and flying the drone. Other than the park's empty, why would I be flying a drone? Just to practice.
Right.
I mean, it might be practicing, but you can still launch it from Seneca, fly it over and fly it back. All we're doing is talking about our property, our boundary lines, and then when it is most intrusive, when there are a lot of people there, then you restrict it. I have no problem with that.
Right.
And I don't see an issue with that we're going beyond or closing down an opportunity. I disagree with you.
The first part of this that you brought up, I agree with. When there are activities, that's when we should restrict it. But my point is that when there aren't activities, that's a good spot for somebody to actually fly a drone. And I'm not going to crash it into somebody's house, or I'm not going to land on the road and get ran over.
The problem is the nuances. How do you control? How do you maintain? How do you adjudicate or enforce? You don't want to have Kevin station somebody out there in all those times. So that's just a basic disagreement. I'm comfortable with it.
You're fine with disagreement. I mean, it's fine. I don't expect I'm going to win the argument.
Given nobody else.
Exactly, yeah. Wouldn't be the first time. Okay.
Won't be the last time.
That's right. Probably not. That's a good lesson for these kids. It's okay.
You need 4
Sometimes
votes.
you don't win an argument.
You got to have 4 votes in order to do
Yeah, you need to count to 4 on this board. If you can't get to 4, you're not going to win. All right. So we will open the public hearing. Is there anybody that would like to speak for or against this ordinance? Would anybody like to speak for or against this ordinance? Third or last time, would anybody like to speak for or against?
There's
Come
a
up to
hand
the
up.
podium.
If you'd like to come up and speak, yeah. Yes, come on up here to the mic. That's great. So state your name. I don't know if we have an
Address.
address from a minor or not, but
No,
let's just
it's
Get
your
your
name.
name, I think that'll be just
Name
fine.
is good.
My name is Gio, and maybe just something I would say like about the drones, if that's
yeah.
maybe like it may. I mean, I maybe it might have been like just practice,
Yeah.
but you never know what the intention of someone they could be doing. So,
Sure.
but and at the parks, maybe it might be okay at certain times when people are not there, but when people are there, we might have like times where like we can do it at certain places or not.
Yeah.
Like maybe we should add like a license, maybe to have like a license. I don't know if you guys have that, or add a license to like, hey, I have permission to do this here for this intention.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Really paying attention.
Okay, would anybody else like to speak for or against this? Second time, would anybody like to speak for or against this? I've got to ask 3 times, so anybody else like to speak for or against this? I'll entertain a motion to close the public
Move to
hearing.
close the public
Second.
hearing.
Okay, all in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye. Aye. Okay, discussion, nomination.
Move to approve the ordinance.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Hey,
Opposed? Nay. Carries 5 to 1.
5 to 1.
5-1.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing your thoughts. Yeah. All right, thanks for coming, guys.
Good job.
Hope you enjoy your
Good day.
experience.
Nice job.
Weather's still pretty good.
Okay, now we will move to consent agenda. The July 19th County Board minutes, proclaim August 20th, 22 of Child Support Awareness Month, approve temporary liquor license for High Forest Old Settlers, approve gambling permit for Rochester Area Builders, approve contract for SB 055-604-018 and 002, contract award for contract 2022-317 OWEF boiler 3 tube installation. Award contract for county projects C-22-3 and C-22-12. Award contract with Aurora Strategic Advisors to provide federal advocacy. Approve agreement to transfer jurisdiction and right-of-way of a segment of County State Highway 4 to Calmore Township. Approve change order number 5 for Oxbow Nature Center project. Approve change order number 1 for Justice Space Remodel Contract 2021-125. Approve change order number 1 for District Energy Replacement Contract 2021-124. All right.
Approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay.
One question.
Yes, go
when you
ahead.
look at the boiler 3 tube installation, I was reading that. It says awarded to Helfrich Brothers for the 1.6, but AB Welding is actually the purveyor of that bid. Am I missing something, or I don't have an updated?
See if Tony can speak to that.
It just caught my eye, so I'm trying to get confused.
Tony Hill, Director of Environmental Resources. Yes, that was a mistake. I just caught that as well. But yes, it should be to the Heifschel brothers. And so it was a mistake that on the listing of contractors. And so it was out of order. So A&B Welding was actually
The second.
They're actually the third.
I got it.
Yeah. So sorry about that. It was a late.
Not a
add.
problem.
Good catch.
Well,
Good catch.
confused me. If it confused me, I figured it confused everybody.
Okay. All right. We got a clarification there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. All right. Regular agenda. Discussion, decision items. Informational. Olmsted County mid-year priority update from Health, Housing, and Human Services. Hello, James.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. James Johnson, HHH Administrator. If you'll remember, I was here a couple weeks ago introducing the mid-year board priorities, and you heard from Director Nikki Niles on corrections and Director Dave Dunn in housing. Today you're going to hear from Public Health Director Denise Daniels, but before we get to public health, I'm going to check in on a couple board priorities that we've been working on at a division level. So, next slide, please. So one of your board priorities is a Pathways to Prosperity practice model effort, and that's been an undertaking in the division for some time now. So looking back on the first slide, we'll check in on where we've been, and the next slide we'll talk a little bit about where we're going. So specifically, the progress to date. Oh, I'm sorry, back up one more slide right there. We have implemented cohort 2, and we maintain cohort services to cohort 1. Again, these are Pathways to Prosperity's referrals into a cohort of folks that we're providing this particular practice model for. Cohort 2, which is now implemented, includes referrals from Child and Family Services, Adult and Family Services, Community Corrections, some referrals from housing, and then also family support and assistance. So those cohorts are both going on in parallel right now.
Mr. Johnson, I don't recall how big the cohorts are.
The cohorts, I wondered if you'd ask that question. What I could say is the referrals are decreasing. So if Jenna was here to ask her, I want to say 7 to 11, and that's cohort 2 right now. I know it was at 7, and I think we got a few more.
Okay.
So, but I would acknowledge the referrals are decreasing, despite some efforts towards increasing the referrals. So that's the update on the cohorts. The other things that we've been working on in Pathways are just more division-wide integration efforts outside of those cohorts. How can we integrate across the division? And you'll see a couple items up there that I'll just like to highlight. That integrated consult, that's a staffing where individuals or staff across the division can refer some individuals or families they're struggling with. They have unique challenges, and they can refer them to the integrated consult, where there's a virtual staffing where people from across the division join to assist in that staffing, people with expertise in housing or eligibility or mental health services, folks from corrections, family support and assistance, adult and family, child and family. They gather together from across the division so that when that staffing is presented, there's a diverse amount of expertise, and the intent there is to have creative solutions and lean on really the expertise across the division instead of some individual in the division struggling with a particular case. This is an opportunity to integrate across the division. The second bullet up there, that collaboration space at HHH CoLab. Through assistance from Kresge Foundation, we remodeled an area in the 2117 building on the first floor. We removed the cubicles and kind of that office environment, and we've replaced it with a collaborative workspace. There's soft seating in there. There's high tabletops. There's a television in there you can project to, and for collaboration. There's whiteboard space just for folks to visit and kind of work through problems. So that's an effort toward, again, creating opportunities to integrate across the division outside of that cohort model, but just more widely options across the division. And then the other item there I would just highlight briefly, I know we talked at a retreat sometime in the spring about that child care assistance benefit cliff. And I'll talk a little bit more in detail on that the next time when I talk about where we're going. But just progress to date. Probably haven't heard much about it at the board level, but there's been a ton of work going on at the staff level to build that proposal and to take the guidance from the board and build a product that you guys can approve later on this fall. And then the other item we've continued to work on is trying to engage the community, and specifically individuals in the community that have received services from our division with lived experience with different departments, and try to engage with them and receive feedback and understand a little bit about how our services impact them and what we can do better to meet their needs. So those are some of the progress to dates from our Pathways program. Now, next slide, please. All right, so I think there's some takeaways maybe that I just want you to leave with today, and one of them is we are going to be, I think of it through like a little bit of a pivot. So we've been maybe focused on the cohorts, what that service delivery looks like for the cohorts. We're now in a space to try to understand and what we've learned from those cohorts, from the feedback of individuals going through the cohorts and the data that we're receiving from the cohorts, and then apply that across the division more so that the integration and if you talk about the practice model, the family-centered practice model, instead of limiting to the cohorts, which I talked earlier, the referrals have been down a little bit, try to understand a little bit about what we're trying to do with those cohorts and build opportunities for those integration opportunities to be across the division and not just in those cohorts. So maybe some of the takeaways for today for Pathways, looking at a little bit of a pivot from a cohort-focused model to a more division-wide integration model. So you can see that on that organic integration across the division to occur. That's what that's referring to. The develop, implement, measure a child care assistance benefit cliff. I mentioned earlier there's been a lot of work behind the scenes. You guys haven't heard a lot of information at the board level. In September, we anticipate bringing a proposal to HCOM and then looking for approval from the board in general on what that pilot will look like in October, with the intention in January to have those services available to the public. So just those efforts continue, and that's a little bit of the look ahead, and there'll be more information through HCOM and in October to the full board. And then also, the third and fourth bullets, just continue to engage with the individuals that have been receiving services from our division and try to understand, just like we've been progress to date, that's similar there. And the fourth bullet, like I suggested earlier, is building these opportunities, whether it's through that integrated console I talked about, the staffing across the division, or that collaborative workspace. We're looking for opportunities in the future to continue to set the conditions for organic integration to occur across the division. Any questions or comments on Pathways before I jump into the next slide? All right. Next division-wide effort related to your board priorities is your priority to create a document management system, electronic document management system within the division. And we've been working with Caseworks to bring that to fruition across the division. And you can see in FSA, and it's going to be, the briefing today will be easy, it'll be like 3 minutes, but there's been a ton of work behind the scenes by staff to prepare files, scan files, build forms, etc., to bring this to fruition. You can see up there, Family Support and Assistance, in June 13, they went live with their electronic data management system. They're the first ones through. I talked to Corinne Erickson, the director in FSA, to get feedback on how that's going, and she continues to be very happy with how that product's providing services to their staff. The level of anxiety going into it has not been met with issues as they're coming out of it. So it's gone very well through FSA, and we've been very impressed with the product and what it will do for us going forward. I did also have these next 2 bullets here, just in the first 3 words of this priority: modernize our technology. This isn't necessarily data or document management, but I would highlight it since I have a brief audience of the board here today. The Code for America partnership, it's been on some Friday reports. I think many of you may be aware of this, but I would just brag a little bit about the work that some of the folks in the division have been undertaking with Code for America. They piloted Men Benefits to help the state roll out a statewide platform that is now in use across the state, which has been a huge success. I think the one thing I was talking with the staff a little bit about Men Benefits, and they describe how it took the work from applying for benefits, so it would take somebody in the community about an hour to do it, brought that down to 13 minutes. So huge win for the individual applying if they use the Men Benefits platform for that, but also huge win on the staff side because information comes electronically and not in a paper form. So big win-win there. And you can see the photograph up there with some of the Olmsted County staff that were involved in that receiving an award for that participation.
Mr. Johnson, if I use Min Benefits and make an application, got it done in 13 minutes, do I then, that comes in, eligibility specialist is assigned, and then is there a personal contact with me, or is it all a transaction without any personal contact to determine eligibility?
I would be speaking a little bit out of turn on that. I don't know that there's personal contact with that, but I would have to follow up and get back to you. I think it's done with the computer, and I could follow up with that and get back to you.
Okay.
It's a great question.
We can take it up at the HCOM committee.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And then the other thing, I just check in on our kiosks. We installed kiosks across the county that really right now they're an opportunity for the community members who come into contact with them to access information. But I'll talk a little bit in maybe some future opportunities for on the next slide. But we have 11 kiosks throughout the county that community members can access information through. So next slide, please. Caseworks, I talked a little bit about how the FSA department had already rolled out Caseworks. You can see the 2 departments are actually within weeks away from implementing Caseworks in their department. So they'll just have that electronic data management, their document management system on August 22nd available. So as we speak in the next weeks to come, there'll be folks scanning and preparing their files for that, and a lot of work behind the scenes to make that happen. And as you can imagine, that's a heavy lift. And on the other side of that, if the experience I assume will be similar to the FSA's, it'll be a big win for those 2 departments as well. And then I just want to touch in on a few of the next steps or things to come after Caseworks is implemented. That's not the end of it. You know, there are other opportunities to continue to grow that platform, enhance the software use and workflows, and how those workflows are processed through the Caseworks platform. Also using that platform to draw down data that help us understand what services we're providing, where the needs are, and how to improve services. And then we can make feedback or take that feedback and make adjustments and what that looks like. And I want to highlight a couple things on the Code for America partnership and the kiosks as well. Code for America has reached back out to us. You know, you've heard a little bit about the ongoing public health emergency and how that's impacting MA renewals. They're on pause. So we haven't been doing MA renewals, and Code for America is trying to be a part of the solution for that. So they're reaching out to some folks that were in the Code for America original effort to bring in benefits, to see if there's any way to simplify or streamline those renewals when that emergency public health emergency ceases and we turn that back on. So I just want to highlight that and just put that out there just for your radar. That's something that we're continuing to look for, ways to use technology to help with that. Another thing, I mentioned those 11 kiosks that are throughout the county. They're information. You can click on it and get information and connect with resources. One of the things we're looking at is, can we use those as an opportunity to receive information, where the client can access the information at the kiosk and then also send information to the county. So we're looking at that as maybe an opportunity down the line. There's some encryption challenges and private data challenges that we have to work through. When we talk about next steps and modernizing technology to improve the services of the community, that's something we're taking a look at. So with that, any questions on the technology piece? If not, I'll be followed by.
Oh, I have a question.
Yes,
So,
Commissioner.
How long, approximately, how long did it take us to work with Code for America to set up the kiosks?
Well, Code for America is separate than the kiosks.
Okay.
But, yeah.
But how long did it take us to set up?
The Code for America piece?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have a good answer for that either, Commissioner.
Well, that's all right.
It's my fourth month.
Well, the thing is that I think that sometimes people think that the government bureaucracy never changes. And, sometimes we get complaints about that. But here's an example of making things a lot easier for people. Not only easier because the process of applying was made easier. The steps were reduced in doing that, and the time that it took was reduced tremendously, and people didn't have to drive in to a central location to pick up a paper application to get that. So all of these things were made easier. My guess is that we increased the number of people that applied because it was easier. So therefore, we help more people. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think there's two sides to that coin. With the increased applications, there's folks that apply that are ultimately not approved. They don't qualify. We have seen increased applications. We've also seen increased folks that don't qualify. So there's two sides to that, where it's bringing in more work that needs to be done, but also allowing folks that have a true need an easier access to the benefits. But I would just to double down, I am super proud of this county and the way we continue to innovate. I think there's challenges with government. The innovation's not typically something you think of in government, because there's not usually a financial incentive to innovate the way it might be in the private sector. And since my time in the county, I continue to see staff intrinsically motivated to innovate and improve the services of the community.
I think that's one of the outstanding things about the staff is that, yes, there's no financial incentive to do this, but the staff that I have always talked to, the reward is that they really want to help people, and they want to help as many people as they can and make it easy for people to help. And that's the reward that the staff gets, to see that they've really done this really well. And it's unfortunate that there isn't more of a reward than a plaque from the state. So
sometimes a thank you and a plaque and recognition.
But
I would agree. I would
That's all we get.
Commissioner. Yeah.
So I have a question. We've cut the time to apply down by 75%. On the state side, once they receive that application, is it in a better form, so it reduces the amount of time that they spend?
If you think about it, when you go through the Men Benefits platform, it's interview. They ask you interview questions instead of somebody filling out a form. And then the software then fills out the forms and sends them to you. So it's simple on the user end, and then it also helps on the staff end as well.
Okay, so there's savings on the staff end too.
Agree. Yeah,
Okay.
It's a win-win there, certainly. So.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Denise.
Good morning, Chairman of the Board, Commissioners. Denise Daniels, Director of Public Health Services. So I am here to provide updates on 3 board priorities that are coming through public health. So go ahead, Clara. The first one, one that you've been hearing for a couple of years, to protect the public's health by minimizing infections and limiting to severe and fatal outcomes due to COVID-19. So our progress today, you've heard a lot about that over the years, but just a quick recap here. When we look at the overall burden of disease, we're very proud in Olmsted County that we have one of the lowest death rates in the nation. So we're at about 0.4%, so less than 1%. Of our citizens passing away from this. What goes along with that is we have continued to see waves, right, with new variants up and down. And the one thing that is holding kind of steady for us, unfortunately, is the hospitalizations. The good news is with the vaccine, we are seeing less people in the ICU, which so the extent of the illness, we're holding fairly well here as well. And with deaths overall, we believe that our vaccine rates have significantly reduced the death rate here. As we move on to the vaccine progress, we have, just through Olmsted County Public Health, administered almost 28,000 vaccines. And that was as of July 11th when we pulled the numbers. We continue to be a leader in the state at 84% of our folks having at least one vaccine. And then if you move even forward, 42% of our entire population is fully up to date. And while that number doesn't seem significant, it is much higher than the state and national average, and we continue to reach out to folks as people become eligible. We do have a big influx of our population right now who is overdue for their booster, and so we continue to wait patiently for the CDC to be able to authorize us to do that, and we do anticipate that in the fall. But we continue. We have open clinics through our normal clinical hours at Public Health where people can come in, get their first dose, second dose, booster. And we do continue to see a very slow trickle of that, and also continue to work with our community partners to make sure that we find places for individuals to be able to access those. We are lucky in our community. We're very saturated as far as access to being able to get vaccinated. Collaboration has been the foundation for our work throughout this with all of our partners in the county. So we've worked with the City of Rochester, Mayo Clinic, University of Minnesota Rochester, and others actually in the state to provide wastewater data. And that has been a great indicator for us. It's usually 2 weeks about ahead of time for us to be able to predict additional surges, et cetera. So as of today, we actually went down this week in Rochester and Byron with just a slight uptick in Stewartville. But we continue to watch those trends and help provide messaging out to the community as we work with that. That itself has been an better indicator now than like number of people testing or percent positive, just because we've really lost track of that for the most part, if you will, because of the number of people that do home testing, and those are not reportable to the state. Next slide, Clara, please. So next steps for us. We continue to work through this, regardless of what people may think, right? Our systems are pretty polished at this point. We do still have about a half dozen staff who they're touching this daily with weekly surveillance reports that we continue to share. So we do continue to track and make sure that we're able to pivot should we need to. What we're tracking right now include cases, hospitalizations, death, and then the wastewater data that I had shared. We do continue to meet with our partners as new information becomes available, or if we're seeing red flags in anything, to be able to, again, then work on joint messaging together out to the public, whether that's social media, our normal media outlets, interviews, etc. So we continue to make sure that we roll that out, along with any new information that comes our way. We're currently supporting efforts for those who are under 5. That's the most recent group that has been authorized for the vaccine. At Public Health, we're taking more of what we would say a stopgap approach. We're that place where if somebody doesn't have a healthcare home, underinsured, uninsured, et cetera, that we assure that they're able to get a vaccine as well. And then the one thing that is not on here, but we are already and have been planning for boosters. We anticipate the release of additional boosters soon. We're hoping to hear that news soon so that we can offer booster clinics as well to the community. Again, I talked about that 50 and under with no underlying health conditions. We're past due. I mean, we're lagging in our immunity. So that is the gist of our COVID response right now. So you can go to the next priority, Clara. The next big thing that we've been working on the past couple of years is to complete accreditation for public health. So for in 2020 and 2021, we really worked extensively on setting up performance management systems. So every single one of our work units has performance measures that we're tracking, and we check in quarterly to be able to make informed decisions based on those, and to assure that our work is being delivered effectively. We stood up an ethics committee countywide to be able to look at ethical issues. We set up an equity action team, again, just as we look at disparities in health. That's always been a huge thing, to be able to be strategic around those. And then we take all of our plans, communication, emergency preparedness, equity action, and we meet quarterly as well to see where there's overlaps and any synergies with the work as we go forward, and not to duplicate efforts. So in fourth quarter of 21, we, as you see on the April 5th slot up there, we submitted our application. That's when it opened for us to be able to submit, to say, yep, we are going to submit, we're in on this. And then in May, we were provided access to upload all of our documents. And so this is through all the domains and measures that are out there. It's hundreds of documents, policies, basically proof that you are meeting the high standards that are needed for re-accreditation. So that's our progress to date. So you're probably wondering, you can go to the next slide, Clara. Where are we at now? We're really at the hands of the Public Health Accreditation Board. All of our stuff is submitted. We have been told by them that it will likely be fall by the time they're able to review all of the documents that we submit and let us know if they need any changes or additional information. So that information, once we get the word, then we will provide anything additional that they need as well. And then we've been told that likely late fallish, they'll have completed review of any new uploaded documents to kind of give us a status there. And it's not likely until January. Again, these are estimations based on kind of the timelines that they showed to us, where they would actually they don't do an on-site visit, but where it would be a virtual, where they would let us know, where we stand with being re-accredited. We're feeling actually pretty confident about that. We've gone through, we've combed through, we've looked and checked, are we putting in what they're asking for? But right, the ball is in their court now. We are very proud of being a high-performing health department. We get asked a lot, do you think it's worth it? We ask our staff that as well in our own internal employee satisfaction survey, of which they do. Continuous quality improvement is now the culture. We have every single one of our work units who does customer service surveys, and through our performance dashboards, to look for where can we make improvements, how do we deliver better outcomes to the community. And so that alone, right, and then making sure that we're implementing evidence-based practices really sets the standard much higher for the work that we do.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Ms. Dennis, how often do we have to seek re-accreditation?
Yep, good question. Every 5 years we seek re-accreditation. So the majority of this, we had 2 years of COVID, 3 going, right? We continue to do this work and stand up all of these things in the heat of chaos. And so super proud, but it's every 5 years is when re-accreditation occurs.
You find that, I was going to ask the question, is it worth it? And you've partially answered it. Is there more you want to say? You feel it really does motivate?
Yeah, I do think it really motivates us. It sets a high standard for the way that we deliver our work, and it holds us accountable for the outcomes of the work. Right? As county government, right, you want to prove that you are doing effective, meaningful things, and that you're not doing just what you need to get by, right? We want to be innovators, like James said. We want to set the standard high. With that said, The culture probably is the biggest thing, you know, that we see as the benefit right now. There have been promises of additional funding, et cetera. I do think it puts us ahead on certain grant applications because we do it. The downfall, it takes an incredible amount of staff time. It takes a lot of time and effort to do this, but we think the outcome is worth it. Yeah.
How many public health services in Minnesota are accredited?
Ooh, that's a really good question. Way less than our, I know that.
There's 51 different public health boards in the state of Minnesota, and I think there's about 15
I was going to say about a
max
dozen
that are
maybe that are
accredited.
accredited.
And the smaller departments are saying it's impossible because of the demands of the accreditation process. They can't meet the standards. And the state has been trying to get all health departments to move to those standards for higher quality service. But smaller departments are saying just can't do it. And some of the departments are, I'm on the state advisory board, that's why I know this, but I was surprised to learn that some community health boards actually are multiple counties. One is 5 counties, one is 18 counties. And so if you have really small rural counties with maybe 1 public health nurse or 2 public health people, they combine into this public health board, but their capacity for them to meet these national standards is really, they say it's impossible, basically. So, but that's why there's sort of a debate about the value of accreditation.
Yeah, I would agree. It is very difficult for some. There's definitely inequities in who can and who cannot achieve this, right?
Well,
So that's a down.
There's inequities, but there's also choices that counties make. All right, and we went through a lull of being safe, healthy, and it's like, okay, we didn't put any money into that, and then all of a sudden you have a pandemic and nobody was ready. That's also the state of Minnesota that has to look at how they're funding public health and the requirements that they have for public health. I'm just very appreciative that our staff is very much aware of this and again leads. My guess is that the same percentage of public health entities is the same across the nation as it is across Minnesota. I have no idea, but I'm guessing that it's probably.
Well, we have a very unusual situation because we are just still one of the 11 states that has state administered locally delivered services. So many states have public health is really state run, and you might have a local health department that does clinical services but not the full scope of public health. So we're a bit of an anomaly as a state.
I think what we've learned from the pandemic is that none of us are safe until everybody's safe. So thank you for doing your
Yeah, you're welcome. And to your earlier point, I can tell you that the staff are incredibly grateful for the support that this board gives to give us a very comprehensive and the resources, right, to be able to do that, to do the work that we do. We are fortunate in that. So. All right, last priority is addressing racism as a public health issue and elimination of inequities in our community by implementing the results of the racism as a public health issue strategy. So first I need to say that this is not just a public health project. We have had an incredible amount of help. I can't not talk about this without talking about Abby Tricker, who is from Public Health, and Amy Liebel, who is from the PAC team, and then the PAC team in general, with some of the analysis and community engagement groups and whatnot that they have helped us with. So what have we done to date? So as you are all well aware, in the beginning of this, several of our county departments and staff provided input and presentations on the work that they do, and then also provided the input on where they were seeing and feeling inequities or areas where we could have potential improvement. With those presentations, we have a subgroup from the Human Rights Commission, so Julian and the staff that work with them, and the Public Health Services Advisory Board formed a subgroup to be able to, again, help champion this work. They actually then from those presentations came up with the 55 different draft, and know that they were draft recommendations, of which we then put out and have been doing significant work recently to the community through the first half of 2022 for community feedback. And so there's been a lot of engagement sessions, both with Olmsted County employees using online surveys and virtual engagement sessions where we were able to provide feedback and any additional insights on those 55. We've gone out to different community organizations with online services and virtual engagement sessions. We've reached out to communities who have been impacted by systematic racism, worked with the Diversity Council to do focus groups to garner any additional information or additions, as well as online surveys. Again, we tried to make this as convenient as possible for people with multiple avenues for them to be able to provide that feedback. And then on the county website, that ran late February through the end of April, we did an online survey that was on our website as well. So there's just been an incredible amount of time, effort, and energy that has spent collecting people's thoughts, input, feedback, experiences, etc. So go ahead, Clara. So what are our next steps? This is super busy, so I don't expect you to see everything in those boxes, but where are we now? We received a report back from the Diversity Council from those different community engagement sessions, of which our PAC team and a couple of our public health staff worked to look at any changes that need to be made and any additional themes that were identified. So right now, those draft recommendations are being edited, updated, etc. And in September, there will be a joint meeting between the Human Rights Commission and the Public Health Services Advisory Board to look at those final recommendations that are coming out from all the engagement sessions. And basically to just be able to have an eye, and since they were part of who championed this, and Chairman Tyne has also been the commissioner who has helped be a liaison to this as well, to look at those and make sure that we're feeling good about what is going to come forward. And then, so that will happen in September. And at the end of September, you all will get the finalized recommendations for your review. And then at the October 4th County Board meeting, that's where those will be discussed and any further action will be decided on. After that, obviously, we're thinking there's going to have to be a handoff, both to different internal teams, staff, etc., to make progress on any of those things that you are wanting some action items moving forward. Some of those I think will have to clearly be scaled of short-term and long-term, right, goals that we do. Some of those I think are going to be fairly easy wins that aren't going to take, a whole lot of effort. And then some of those I think we're going to be looking at, maybe there are going to be legislative things, maybe there are going to be policy or protocol changes, maybe there are some systems changes, but after that board meeting, we'll vet out, what that action plan looks like as well. So that is basically the gist of where that has landed. Again, just an incredible amount of collaboration and work that has been done to get us this far. So any questions or comments?
Great. Righty.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, just a little clarification on what Denise pointed out, that the recommendations will come to you in October. I anticipate that the board will decide, the decision will be to accept the report. Decisions about what you actually want to go forward won't be made that day, but then will be sent out to committees to work through the board process. So, for example, if a recommendation from the report is something about housing, you would on that day agree or not, or agree to accept or not accept the report and the recommendation, but then send that recommendation on, in that case, probably to HRA or to the Health, Housing, Human Services to further figure out how would we actually implement, and then you would have another choice in the future about do you actually implement. So I just wanted to be clear that you're not going to be making decisions, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. It'll just be accepting or not accepting the report and then sending it on to the appropriate board committees for further work. Correct.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And that's pretty well outlined, I thought, on this. It's going to be about a year before basically we hear back on which things we're going to act on.
It's been a really thorough process and
Full
a good
circle,
one.
yes. Yes. Mm.
Other
Any other
comments?
thoughts?
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, if I could please just loop back to Commissioner Cascaden's question real quick in regards to re-accreditation or accreditation. There are 40 states, including the Minnesota Department of Health, that are accredited, 305 local government entities, and 5 tribes. And in the state of Minnesota, it is 11, including the state, and then the other 10 are either city or county agencies that have been accredited.
Thank you.
That's great. Pretty exclusive club.
All right.
All right.
Thank
you, Denise.
Yeah, thank you for your time.
You bet. Okay, well, we will move to board and committee reports. Matt.
Hello, Mark.
What?
Nothing. Quiet.
Okay, Sheila.
I've got a couple, 3 things, Mr. Chair. First of all, there was a little bit of mix-up, as you know, about our annual invitation to meet with the Fair Board. So you've heard about that in the committee report. But Commissioner Tyne and well, let me thank our staff that put together our commissioner's calendar, because that's what alerted me to the fact I hadn't received the invitation. So I did go out, and Commissioner Tyne was also there. 2 things from that luncheon last Tuesday. One is that the chair of the County Fair Board spoke very glowingly about the relationship with the Sheriff's Department, about the work that they have been doing in anticipation of some of the youth issues that had plagued the fair the year before, and how they'd made some changes in physical arrangements at the fair, also working with the school resource officers from Rochester PD. And I believe he said that that staffing was actually paid for by youth hockey. So it was sort of an interesting kind of amalgam of coordination to keep everything kind of quiet at the fair, which was, he just was full of praise of the relationship with Steve Flint, with the sheriff, with working together to make sure the fair would go off well and be very safe. He also talked about the fact that many of the buildings on Graham Park that the fair uses, the animal agriculture buildings, are beyond their life expectancy, and that they are feeling very pushed for having the space they need to operate, and urged us to look very comprehensively at the Expo Center and not to delay much longer on the Expo Center. I suggested that the Fair Board might want to communicate with us directly about that, but I would share the message, so I'm sharing the message. But again, just very strong praise from the Fair Board for our facility staff and for the work with the Sheriff's Department. I also wanted to comment on the fact that we lost the milking contest again. And yeah,
it doesn't happen that frequently.
I'd like you to do this for the next year. Frequently give him a hand exerciser. But what you may not have known is that our chairman could not get on his knees to milk that plastic cow, and he laid on his stomach and tried to milk the cow that way. Now, I think, to be fair, the mayor should have had to do the same thing. But and I say, she was wearing a white shirt. She probably wouldn't have gotten to Mark Tyne's level. So anyway, condolences on that. But what an effort to lay on your stomach to milk that cow.
Should have had Matt stand in.
Yeah, I should have called you in, Matt.
They have the record.
Yeah, he does. Will never be broken.
I don't know, the ringer they had last year for the city was pretty.
He was very good. He was a farm boy, yeah. Okay. I also wanted to note that the Housing Coalition is having a retreat this Thursday to look kind of at our planning process. Things are seeming to really gel there with performance indicators and with a plan, and they have a new site, a web page on the foundation's website, which is pretty informative, and they've released an RFP for senior housing as one of the areas that are, a strong area of need. So just call that out. And finally, another kind of experience of praise for the county came on Sunday. Several of us had been invited to speak with a group that call themselves the Southeast Minnesota Patriots, and I was the only one of us that was available to go. And the group also has an overlap with another group that calls themselves the Olmsted County Election Integrity Committee. And so they spent an hour hearing about county services. They were they asked a lot of really good questions. They admitted that generally they don't know that much about what the county does and what the county board does. And then they spent an hour talking about election integrity. And they were full of praise for Luke Turner and full of praise for our property records folks. And in the midst of it, the same morning, there was this big article about Sherburne County's experience with concern about election integrity from a group of citizens. And it was an amazing contrast to even have the head of the local election integrity groups stand up at a certain point in time and say to people who are asking somewhat pointed questions of Luke, let's remember, he is implementing state policy and he's doing it the way the state requires. And so your frustration isn't with him or with Olmsted County, your frustration is with, you think the law should change. It was not at all what you might have expected given the morning coverage of the Sherburne County experience. But it is also a reflection of the fact that a lot of the people in that room were election judges. They'd been trained by our staff, and there was just a very positive feeling, a lot of concern on their part about election integrity, but it was a very positive interchange. And I just think, when we get that in 1 week, praise from the Fair Board, praise from a group of citizens that are concerned about the integrity of government, I just wanted to share that with you.
That's great.
Got to be doing something right.
That's right. Thank you, Sheila. Great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In addition to the sheriff getting praise for the county fair, I just want to point out that the Department of Corrections was also a part of that. And although they work quietly, they work very effectively. Appreciative that they were involved in that, and the sheriff cooperated with the Department of Corrections to have a positive outcome. Also, I think you may have received a couple weeks ago the Age-Friendly Olmsted County report. There's a lot of good information in there, and I'll be talking with HHH a little bit about that, because I think there's some suggestions in there that either that they were not aware of, that the county's already doing, but also there's information of maybe how the county could do a little bit better. And I think that we all need to be reminded that a third of our population is over 65 years of age, and that at around 1,200 to 1,400 of households are financially stressed, which makes it incumbent upon us to provide those services for those people. Otherwise, they may become homeless. And that is the fastest growing group of people that are becoming homeless right now, largely because of financial stress. So things that we should be looking at in order to help those people, I think that we might glean from that report and discuss it within our own departments about how we might be able to do those things to keep those people in their houses and to keep them healthy. Thanks.
Thank you. Chip?
Nothing.
Ken?
Nothing worth reporting.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, would you like to move the appointment of the volunteer?
That's good. We got a motion to approve the volunteer. Do we have a
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes. Okay. All right, I got a couple things. One, I'd like to take a moment to recognize Martin Larson, who works as a feedlot technician for Olmsted County in our Soil and Water Conservation District, and he's been instrumental in assisting us with that new program to protect our drinking water and streams and rivers. This past week, Martin's family is recognized as the Olmsted County Fair as being the Farm Family of the Year for their land practices and their positive activity within the farming community. So he truly does talk the talk and walk the walk. And so congratulations to Martin and his family for that recognition.
Yeah.
So on that note, I'll end this meeting with a quote from British author and speaker Simon Sinek. I might be pronouncing that wrong. It fits nicely with our actions on protecting groundwater and many other decisions we make. Simon states, Leadership is not about the next election, it's about the next generation. With that, I'll take a motion to end the meeting.
Move to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?